Let me start by thanking our Hungarian partners for inviting us into the project in the first place. And I don't know what the general Hungarian view on Norway is, but some of you may ask, why Norway? And of course, apart from the obvious that it's a condition it has to do with the funding of this, I think also that there are some common challenges and actually some common solutions as well. So we'll get back to that in a while. I would also like to introduce my esteemed colleague, Risa, who is the green adaptation expert. I'm more the sort of general municipality and governance guy here. I'm not going to bore you to death with a lecture in political science, but this is a basic overview of the Norwegian governance system. And I'm not sure how much of this is familiar to you from the Hungarian context. But the municipalities, the local level, I think generally speaking in Norway has, they pride themselves, rhetorically at least, to have a lot of autonomy. In actuality, that might be debatable, but there is also a regional level in Norway. You have the county assemblies, which is not superior to the municipalities. You have a county governor, which also acts as a sort of advice and control unit for the central government. So a little bit more about the municipalities. The local level of government, of course, financed by national and government and local taxes. And the Norwegian municipalities have a wide set of functions. So it's generally a major welfare provider in Norway. So as you can see, social services, general health services, elementary schools, water, waste, fire protection, land use. So it's a broad set of tasks that the municipalities have. And these mandatory tasks are also something that is supposed to ensure cross-national equality, so you have sort of the same kind of services all around the country. There are currently 428 units, but there is an ongoing unification process, so and it's quite uncertain at this time how many municipalities we will end up with, but quite a number less than today would be a fair guess. So regarding the general climate change adaptation and the challenges related to climate change, I will give the word to Hanne.
Thank you. Yes, so similar to what you mentioned in Hungary, Norway is also expecting a general warmer and wetter climate. And as you can see on if you can see on the picture to the right, between 2030 and 2061, we expect temperature increase between 2 and 3 degrees Celsius. We also expect milder winters. And the timing and frequencies of extreme events are becoming more and more common. So what was before an extreme event is now becoming more of a normal occurrence. But as our colleague or friend from Norway said earlier, Norway is a very wide country, and how these impacts unfold varies quite a lot between different regions. And the impacts varies between sectors and communities and interact with other processes of change. And we should also mention that Norway depends a lot upon its marine and ocean resources, and the ocean is also experiencing a lot of warming and is becoming more acidic, which will also have an impact. And due to the formal organization of climate change in Norway, the responsibility lies among the actor that is responsible for performing that task, and that is, by the most part, a local matter, because climate change impacts are local. and municipalities are key actors due to their planning monopoly of land use and also the broad responsibility for other social development. Some coordination are given by the regional level. While there has been a white paper on adaptation in Norway, there are no formal guidelines requiring adaptation specifically, but adaptation has been incorporated in other pieces of legislation. So in contrast to other tasks that municipalities are required to perform, such as schooling and health services, adaptation is not one of those. And that has, at least from the research we have reviewed, led to a largely ad hoc focus in the municipalities. And the challenges for municipalities are often related to natural disasters and extreme weather events. And in Norway, we just give a few examples of what these can look like. We have flooding events like you do here in Hungary, and they are both more of a rural character, relying on rivers, snowfall, snow amount and snow melt, precipitation levels, and we also have those flash floods and the problem with runoff water and drainage capacities in the urban areas. As been mentioned before, sea level rise is also a problem in Norway, and to what extent that will impact different coastal towns depend upon where in the country they are, because the northern regions of Norway are actually still lifting from the last ice age. But a lot of the coastal cities have cultural heritage and economic activities in the coastal zone, and it's especially when sea level rise are combined with coastal storms, and that storm surge creates a lot of problems. And this is actually from where Arild and I live in Buda a few years back. Due to the topography and geology of Norway, we also have problems with avalanches, land and mudslides. Well, there's a climate component here too, to when these will be released. And this leads to infrastructure disruptions that can isolate communities in the north, particularly, and they pose risks for life's health and the built environment.
So when we were asked to provide some case studies for material from this project, of course we had a lot of research to base our selection on. But trying to find a sort of geographical distribution as well as large municipalities and smaller municipalities, we ended up with these sort of 5 cases. Only that one of these cases, the Oslo region, comprises several municipalities. So, although some challenges are common, there are obvious differences as well, because as you can see, the northernmost case in Hanne has a definite sort of Arctic challenges that is not found to that extent in the southern parts. So, Madam, perhaps you would.
So I'm going to present the Stavanger case study. The Stavanger is located in the west part of Norway and is we could say, an oil capital of Scandinavia. And the challenges here is that the population has been increasing for some time, and this is a trend that's expected to continue. And this requires an increased demand for housing. So areas that were previously agricultural are now being converted into housing blocks. And this specific case study goes into the development of a housing project in an agricultural area. And the problems when you convert penable soil into built structures is that you get a problem with runoff water. And here it was expected that the existing drainage system could not handle an added impact of a housing area. And we found here that there's often a conflict between planning priorities that might want to encompass as much as it's possible this handling of runoff water, and the political priorities that want as many houses built as fast as possible to deal with this housing crisis. And the solutions that the planners came up with in this specific case was that They wanted to deal with the runoff water locally, and they wanted to find localized management solutions. And this entailed, in this case, to plan for green areas and build less dense. As you can see, they planned for football fields and other communal areas that can be allowed to be flooded. And this effort was enabled by cooperation between some of our colleagues in Vestlandsforskning and consultancy firms and others who helped interpret climate projections to make them relevant for the local planet. And it allowed for better estimates of what to expect from climate change and precipitation in the future, and what scenario one should incorporate in the plans. And this was also helped by a Stavanger municipality who has had a quite strong focus on runoff water management and has now incorporated a formal requirement that planners need to consider this when they develop new areas. And moving on to the next case study, which is a little bit different than the others because it's more to do with what the communities do rather than the municipalities. But Østre is a mostly agricultural community in the mountainous area in Norway. It's also relying upon tourism now. But the problem here is that how to maintain agricultural productivity when the climate is quite variable and is expected to become more so in the future. And this is a case study of the summer of 2009. When the weather varied a lot. First it was very wet, then it rained practically every day, and then the snow settled early. So this leads to problems with harvesting fodder for animals and an additional workload. And in this case we saw that farmers had actually developed strategies to deal with these kinds of conditions for a long time. And this involved informal cooperations between farming neighbors and families, so that they could access under difficult conditions farming equipment, extra labor, and experience and knowledge in planning these activities helped them to actually get through this summer without the damage that one could expect. And this case study kind of highlights that traditional adaptation strategies, such as resource dependent communities have developed for some time, are important to consider it in municipal planning too.
Then of course there is the Hammerfest case, which Hammerfest is, well, at least it was known as the northernmost city in the world. I'm not quite sure if that holds still, but anyway. The challenges here are related to several things. One thing is that climate change is impacting the fisheries, and the specific quotas for catch is not geared towards the changes that is seen in fish stocks. So there's a sort of limited local ability to do anything about that, but that's definitely a challenge. But of course, also here, increased extreme weather events, as polar lows, storm activity, icing, and precipitation, which is also a cause for flooding here. But then, of course, the increased risk of snow avalanches is in here. And there is a general capacity shortage in dealing with this. So, what has been Hammerfest's response to this? Well, they have sort of integrated technology and people-based approaches. And I think it's fair to say that there's sort of a software approach that is predominant here. There has been quite a focus on gaining new knowledge and cooperating with outside experts to achieve better risk assessments has been central to how Hammerfest has dealt with their challenges. Fredrikstad is one of the municipalities in the southernmost part of Norway. And again, we see the same picture, unusually high levels of precipitation, has caused flooding. And the sort of inadequacy of drainage system has been a major challenge in that respect. And also here, the climate projections are indicating warmer winters as in the other places. And the type of precipitation is changing. We're going to become less snow than before and more rain due to the warmer winter season. So Fredrikstad commissioned a study of socio-economic scenarios in response to these challenges. And specifically then downscaled climate projections on a level that was manageable for the municipality was needed. And they also cooperated with scientific expertise to achieve this. They also appointed dedicated environmental officials within the municipality organization, which has been a decisive factor in dealing with this. And also networking with other municipalities. The Oslo region, that comprises, in this case, several municipalities, again experience the same sort of basic challenges, but also here population growth is a key variable, as also was the case in Stavanger, which then again are leading to challenges within area planning and within building policies. But what is quite clear to see is that the awareness among these several municipalities varies. So it's not the same kind of focus in all of these municipalities. There has been established a network or a cross-sectoral adaptation group, as it's called. Two of the municipalities participate in that, while one municipality has gone for the sort of traditional approach with sort of embedding implementation within the municipal sectors as usual. And a couple of these municipalities had at the time, I'm not sure what the case is today, but it wasn't really on the agenda at all. So the short-term solution would be sort of implementing it vertically down in the sort of traditional municipality organization, but well, the research says that focusing on networks, integration, learning from others, so horizontal integration is what's needed for the future. So in the sum of this, there are some basic main drivers for succeeding with adaptation, and perhaps you would give us the details.
In Norway, our colleagues have found that since adaptation is not mandatory as other municipal tasks are, engaged officials, and in Norway we call them fire zones, that really are dedicated to this issue, has been a huge factor in placing adaptation on the municipal agenda and to implement adaptation measures. And while these people are highly important for it, particularly small municipalities, larger municipalities tend to have adaptation personnel allocated to this nowadays. But it also makes the municipalities a bit vulnerable. If this person changes his job, maybe adaptation slips out of the agenda again. But this has been a decisive factor in Norway. We also see that municipalities that have experienced extreme events and have had to adapt reactively to these are also more likely to be proactive in preparing for future events. And also through the observation of real-world indicators, by this we mean that the municipal planners can observe climate change either through quantifiable measures or local knowledge that see that this is actually something that is changing now, and this makes the municipalities more likely to do proactive planning to prepare for it in the future. We've also seen that researcher involvement has been an important factor in placing adaptation on the agenda. And this, our colleagues have argued, is to do with the climate science is often quite abstract and sometimes not relevant for the local level, and researchers have then been able to figure as some kind of mediators that translate adaptation or climate projections into something that makes sense for municipal planners, and also the other way around. Municipal planners may enlighten researchers and climatologists what kind of factors they need in order to plan for adaptation.
just regarding the cases, of course this is a very brief sort of overview, and for those interested, they will find more information in the material that we have provided for the So, summing up then, what are the municipalities' needs in relation to climate change adaptation? Well, knowledge, as we have mentioned, is a sort of definite factor. But it has to be framed within a manageable time and geographical scale. So it needs to be downscaled to a manageable municipal level, but also within a time frame that makes sense to planning. And the sort of, at least previous tendency to talk about climate change as something occurring in the distant future is not, of course, suitable to sort of operational planning. And there's a need to frame that awareness within a shorter time frame. Secondly, there's a need to assess the local community or the municipality's vulnerability as a logical next step from these climate change projections, and a logical step, further step from the sort of science of it, in order to actually make operational planning possible. And then, of course, as everywhere else in the world, I suppose, time and money is sort of a scarce commodity. But even in a sort of Norwegian economy, which is lubricated by oil and a pretty affluent society, it's still, of course, a question of funding these sort of efforts. So the main conclusions then: the cooperation between the climatologists, the social scientists, and users are imperative. And I think that sort of translates also to the Hungarian experience. And the sort of scientific knowledge, the climate projections and so on, is important, but it has, of course, then to be included in municipal decision making, and it needs to be combined with local knowledge. So it's sort of the marriage between local knowledge and science is important to make this work. So the importance of institutional capacity is important beyond time and money to turn this knowledge into action. So what do we mean by institutional capacity? Well, beyond the time and money restrictions, we see that cross-sectoral coordination is needed. One needs to take several policy areas and sectors into account. And of course, as I mentioned, risk and vulnerability assessments are key tools, but allocating resources to the implementation of it is important. So, as I mentioned, that step from doing the science, doing the projections, doing these sort of scenarios for the future, and then addressing that and making operational targets visible is important. To do that, an integration into the overarching municipality planning is needed. So it has to be taken into account not just on the sort of technical, specific level, but it has to be discussed in a broader context, in a political, local level. And there is a need to routinize or make routines for this sort of area and continue planning, and there's probably still some go to implement such routines. There are still some challenges though. Motivation is important. Making projects like these, increasing awareness is important, but that in itself does not equal adaptive capacity. At least in the Norwegian context, the political focus has been on climate change as something related to emission cuts, and that is of course important still for the future. But the focus on adaptation hasn't been that strong. That might be changing now. I think it's fair to say that we see a stronger focus on adaptation than previously. but we still have some way to go. And a part of that would be the sort of cognitive shift, the way of thinking, from adapting to variable weather to actual climate change. Because a common answer when you meet municipalities in Norway would be that, well, extreme weather, come on, this is Norway, we're used to it, we can deal with it. But that sort of attitude might not be enough when facing actual climate change. But we also see that decision-making under uncertainty, which is what we are talking about when dealing with climate change, is also viewed differently in different parts of the municipal organization. The overall major planning people are much more okay with that than the sort of technical specific people. They would like numbers and very specific targets for what they want to do. So that is of course a challenge. Well, the last slide, the next to last slide here. Norway and Hungary. Transferability. This is something to be learned from this. And I think I would be very wary to say that Norway, in a sense, have the solutions to this. Because I don't think that's true. I think we are still in a process of learning as Hungary and, well, most countries are, really. But in terms of the comparability of the climate change challenges, I think, as you've seen, there are definite similarities. Of course, we have the coastline, as mentioned, that is something entirely different, with its own specific challenges. But a lot of challenges are comparable. But then again, the institutional structure is different, and I'm not going to pretend to know too much about how the local level in Hungary actually works. But of course, the question of available resources, again, would be, I think, common to the local levels in both countries. So, on a general note, I think there's although there are differences between the two countries, there are some general learning points. The involvement of scientific expertise and the co-production of knowledge. I mean, the marriage, as I said, between the local knowledge and the scientific knowledge is important, and I think that will apply here as well. It wouldn't surprise me if you also need dedicated, engaged officials here as well to be able to front that sort of adaptation work. And lastly, but not least, integrative thinking and holistic approaches, thinking cross-sectoral, thinking how to plan for climate change impacts on a number of sectors is important. So, in a sense, I think that is what we all have seen in the Hungarian cases that we presented also. So, thank you for your attention. This is a view of some of the coastline. This is our hometown, Nordland, Arctic northern Norway. So there's a lot of topography and ocean as well. So that's the challenge. Okay, thank you.